won't be able to do.
Okay, so I am going to be teaching you how to make rolls today. This is the recipe I'm going to be using, and I got it from my grandma, who got it from one of her friends. And so this is this older recipe, and it's so yummy. Okay, anyways, I will be putting this in the description if you want to use this. Okay, I'm gonna start. So, I like to start off by getting the hot stuff out of the way so it doesn't kill my yeast. So I pour in 2 cups of milk into my measuring glass bowl thing. And I measure out 2 cups. I'm going to double check just in case I did too much. I'm going to put it down so it's level. And it looks like I did exactly 2 cups almost. JK, need some more. Okay, so I put the milk into this glass bowl, and then I add the margarine. And so, it usually takes about 3 minutes on high or whatever temperature the microwave is on, so I'm going out of shot to stick that in the microwave. And throw that out of the way. Thank you. And so now, I'm going to move on to the yeast, because I kind of want that to start rising while the hot stuff's in there. So I open up my yeast. I like to use this kind of yeast. And so, gotta open it up. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So, I measure out 2 tablespoons of yeast. And 1, 2, and after I do that, I start my sink, turn on my sink to warm, and then I'm gonna measure out ½ cup of warm water, just using tap water because it's much easier than warming up a cup of water from, Anyways, so I fill the water, and once it's about, it can't be too hot or else it'll kill your yeast. So I just make sure it's warm enough that it will activate the yeast. And so I'm going to pour it in the cup out of shot so it doesn't spill everywhere. Okay, so I poured in my water into my little cup. Not little cup, I chose a big cup because usually the yeast will rise while you're putting in all the other ingredients. And I'm going to add a tablespoon of sugar to the mix, because that's what you do with the yeast. And I stir it up with a fork. Make sure to get out all the clumps so no yeast clumps will be stuck in my mixture. And so this is what it'll look like usually. And you'll see clumps being stuck to my fork, and I like to try to scrape that off so I can get all that good stuff. Now once I feel like I've mixed it up good enough, I like to set it to the side, because we won't need that for a little bit. I'm going to put the yeast away because I need to refrigerate it. Okay. And so there's 17 seconds left on the milk and margarine. Hopefully hopefully the margarine will be all melted by the time the timer goes off. You can use butter if you don't have any margarine, it doesn't really matter. Okay, so the margarine isn't melted all the way, and this is what it looks like right now. So I'm gonna stick it back in because I usually want that to be pretty much melted before I put it in the bowl. So I put that in for like another minute, and hopefully that'll be good. Oh, also preheat your oven to 350 on convection bake right now. I already did that. I forgot to tell you guys I did that. Anyways, this is my sister Mel. She's in the video. We were making cupcakes earlier and she's helping finish off the decorating for fun. And these look so cute. Anyways, hopefully we're almost there. I'm going to start cracking the eggs right now because you can put that in your KitchenAid or bowl or whatever you're using to make your bread in. And it doesn't really matter if you crack it right now. So you use 2 eggs in the recipe. And I know some people like to crack their eggs in a separate bowl, but I don't really care because I usually don't get any eggshells in it. So, doing that. And the microwave just went off. And awesome. Even though the butter is not completely melted, I meant the margarine. I usually use butter. Isn't completely melted, I'll stick it in anyways. Okay, that can be a messy part right there. If you're a patient person, you probably could avoid that mess. But as you can see, that's what happens when you brush. So I better wipe that off. Gotta get it on the floor. Okay. And perfect. Okay, I'm gonna rinse that off. And I'm gonna start my KitchenAid so that mixture can start cooling down before I need to put in the yeast. Because if you put your yeast in right now with the milk and the margarine that you just warmed up, it's gonna kill it. So you have to start putting in the other ingredients to help cool it down so it doesn't kill it. Anyway, so I'm gonna start putting in the other ingredients, and you can see the steam rising. And so I usually like to put that on like 4 so it can start cooling down. And I'm going to move on to my next ingredient on my list, which is half a cup of sugar. So, since this is wet, I'm going to use my other half a cup that I have next to me and pour that in. And then I take my salt and I put in 2 teaspoons of salt. 1, 2, and after I let that mix together for a second, I can finally move on. I'm going to put this away so it's out of the way, so it's easier to knead the bread when it comes time. I'm going to turn it down because it looks like it's starting to squash. So I turned it down to 2 right now. And I'm going to put in 1 cup out of 6 to 8 cups that you'll probably need. You could add more flour if you want your rolls harder or whatever. I usually like my rolls softer, so I usually do about 6 or 7 cups. Add a little more if I feel like I need it, but yeah. Okay, so this is 1 cup of flour going in, and this is just to help bring down the temperature so I can stick in the yeast, which is starting to rise, and that's why you'll need to make sure you put your yeast ingredients in a bigger cup so it doesn't overflow. And it looks like it's splashing. So I turned it down to 2 again. And oh, this is another important thing I like to do to see if I can add my yeast or not. The bottom of my KitchenAid it'll be really hot, and that's after putting in the milk and the margarine, and that's when I know the yeast definitely cannot go in. And I just like to feel the bottom of the bowl as I put in flour to see if I feel like it's getting warm but not too hot for me to put in the yeast, and it still feels too warm, so I'm going to add another cup. Another cup going in. So that's my 2nd cup. I'm going to turn it up again for a second. This is about 3 right now. So you can see how there's flour getting stuck to the side of the bowl. And I usually like to take a rubber spatula and scrape down the sides so I can get everything in the bowl. So I'm grabbing my rubber spatula and then I'm gonna push down the flour on the sides that are getting stuck there real quick before I add anything else. And I like to do this as I go, so I can make sure nothing's getting stuck to the bottom or the sides. And I'm using all the flour I put in. You know what? It's almost there, I think. I'm gonna touch the actual dough and make sure, because you know what? That feels warm but not too hot, so I'm gonna stick in my yeast now. And I better wash off my hands. Perfect timing, because it looked like if I waited any longer, my yeast would have overflowed. That's happened quite a few times. So, definitely happy I can put it in now. I better turn it down. Putting it back to 2 so I can pour it in. And I like to use my fork to scrape off all the sides of the cup so I can get all the yeast in there that I need. And it looks like I pretty much got everything. And I'm going to put this in the sink. Okay, so I'm going to let that mix for a second. I'm going to put the milk away. Okay, I'm going to turn it up again to 3, and I feel like that's been mixing for a good amount of time. So I'm going to start adding my final cups of flour. Hopefully I have enough in here, but I'm starting to think I'm going to have to fill up my flour bowl. Sadly, that's never fun. Anyways, yes, I'm going to add in my 3rd cup of flour. I think that was my 3rd. I always lose track. That's when I just look at the dough and I kind of guess. Okay. This is going to be my 4th cup, I think, or 5th. And I already know I'm going to need more flour. Wait, what milk? Oh, that's so cute. Oh, why aren't you mixing it red? Did you like yellow?
Because I was going to do crowns, but it's going to turn out.
Why don't you do crowns?
I can't, literally.
Yes, you can.
I don't think it'll look very good, so I'm just going to do roses.
Oh, can you please try to do one more and I'll look?
One more what?
Crown?
Okay. And I don't know if our cupcakes are going to turn out, so we might just have to do Mad Hatter.
What do you mean?
Look.
Well, it's fine.
They were watery just a second ago. And if these don't turn out, then I was thinking we could do like a galaxy cupcake and stars.
Oh, that's great. I think that they're going to turn out. The Mad Hatter hats look awesome. Okay, so now that I've filled the flour, I'm going to go put it away again. Okay, well, looks like I can add my 5th cup of flour. So, 5th cup going in. I'm going to turn it back down to 2 because I don't want the flour to come out of the bowl. for a second. No to 3. So I'm going to scrape the sides so I make sure that I'm getting all the dough in there. And make sure there's no flour clumps stuck to the very bottom, which they're almost, no, not almost. There's always clumps at the bottom. So I like to make sure I get them in the dough.
Slowly.
Yes.
This is what I'm not doing, Brent.
That looks good. I like it. You should do it.
I'll do 1 gram, and then we can do the rest of these.
You're gonna turn it up. That's definitely helping getting the stuff at the bottom out. Okay, I'm gonna take it out to knead now. Ow, I just crushed my hand. Okay, anyways, that was stupid. Okay, and on to the kneading. I know I didn't do much commentary on the other part because I was kind of concentrating, making sure that the dough wouldn't spill out or anything. So on that part, I usually like to try to get the dough to not stick too much to the sides of the bowl before I take it out, because then it'll be too sticky and that'll be a mess when you try to knead the dough, and no one likes that. So I have put flour all over my counter so I could start eating. And I'm going to take out my bread stirring thing. Always forget what it's called. Bread mixer. And so I'm going to put a little bit more because I feel like you can't go wrong with more flour. And so I just like to pop it out on the counter.
I was like, I should write a few things. I was going to do
Like
something
that.
similar for my parents.
And there's some dough still stuck to the bottom of the bowl, so I'm going to try to use my hands that I just covered with flour to scrape it out so I don't waste any good, perfectly good dough. And I'm going to stick it the rest. I usually like to take it out right now so it's a little softer. I think I put in about 7 cups right about now, and I think that's like my happy place with flour because the dough is still super soft, and that's what my favorite kind of bread dough, softer stuff, because that means the actual bread will be soft. Okay, so right now I am kneading the bread, and it's basically like doing CPR. You're going like, stay alive, ah, basically.
Yeah, I kind of got that.
So
In fact, a couple of the
I'm making sure I get all the different sides of the dough to make sure if there were any clumps in the dough. Hopefully I got that all out when I mixed, but kneading, I'll make sure that you definitely get all of that out of the way And so now it's getting a little harder to knead. And that's when that's when I know that I'm almost there. And so I like to try to knead it into a ball before I stick it into a big bowl so it can rise for an hour. So I'm going to stick it in my bowl, and it's already pretty circle-like. And I'm going to stick it in my bowl like this, and I'm going to rinse off my hands and grab a bigger rag so it'll cover the top of the bowl for an hour while it rises. I don't know why you have to get it wet, but you do. And so I'm going to get my rag wet. Bring it out. Make sure it's not sopping wet, just damp. And you put it over the dough. And after I've pretty much wringed out all of the water, you can stick it over the top of your dough and set a timer for an hour. Alexa, set a timer for 1 hour.
1 hour, 30 minutes.
And so in 1 hour, the rolls will be done. I'm going to stick this back in my flour container because I didn't use my doughy hands to grab it. I just poured it out. And okay, an hour has passed and my rolls have risen, and so I took off the wet cloth and put it to the side, and I already made a pan of rolls so you could see. And now I'm going to show you how to do it yourself. So take some Pam or whatever spray you use. Get your cookie sheet. I put the spray on my hands so it doesn't stick. I just grab a handful and then I do a okay sign or neck yourself. Anyways, so I do that, and then I just stuff the roll through the bottom, and then once I feel like it's a decent size, and you have to keep in mind that they're gonna basically double in size, so I make sure it's like around that size when I top it off, and I just try to stuff in the ends of the roll inside of itself so then I don't have to worry about it looking weird. It'll taste the same even if you mess up, so that's always a good thing about making rolls. So, I'm gonna keep going. I hope you enjoy this, Enya, whoever is watching. Enya is amazing. And if you don't know who Enya is, look her up. She's great. And a really awesome thing, but that I won't be able to show you, is that this dough can be used to make scones, mousse balls, and you can also make cinnamon rolls with this dough. So that's awesome. And I need to spray my hands more because the dough's getting stuck to my hands. You can also make like bread. You don't just have to make rolls. You could make like a pan of rolls and use the rest of it to make a little bread. So I'm just gonna pretend like this is a bigger thing so you can see how to make a bread if you ever wanted to. So basically you'd stuff it inside of itself like that and get a bread pan. And after it looks kind of like that, you'd stick it in the bread pan and let it rise for 15 minutes. And then you could cook it basically the same way as rolls, but you would cook it for, hey Mom, how long do you usually cook bread?
Like 30 minutes, 30 to 35 minutes.
Oh, okay, so you usually cook bread for like 30 to 35 minutes. And that's like the biggest difference between the rolls and the bread. But my family loves rolls, so I'm just gonna be, nope, I need a, yeah. It's gonna be a big roll. Okay, and that's it for now. So, I'm gonna take my wet rag that I used to cover my bread before and cover my rolls for 15 minutes and let it rise again. Alexa, set a timer for 15 minutes. And I'll show you what it looks like after.